Hi Lancers, we are going to wrap up our unit on maps with a paragraph about maps. We are going to be using this paragraph outline. If you have Mrs. B or Mr. Lutz, this should look really familiar to you. It's the same kind of outline that you use in English class. So the first thing we are going to do is read our prompt, and then we're going to collect some information that we can use in our paragraph. So right here is the prompt, what you need to do. It says, what kinds of information can maps communicate about our world? Use the political, physical, and thematic maps from our textbook as evidence. So you are writing a paragraph that tells your reader some of the different kinds of information that maps can tell us or communicate about our world. We've spent a lot of time working with lots of different kinds of maps. Specifically on this paragraph, though, we're going to be talking about what a political map, a physical map, and a thematic map can communicate. So we're going to start by gathering information. That'll make it much easier to write our paragraph. If we gather our information first, we just have to put it into our plan, and then we can focus solely on the writing. So this is where we are going to gather our information. If you are doing this at home because you're absent, you can just get out a blank piece of paper, maybe turn it sideways, make 3 columns, or just take notes in 3 separate parts. We're first going to look at a political map from our textbook, then a physical map, and then one example of a thematic map. We're going to talk about, in general, what each map communicates, what they're for, and then you're going to gather some examples specifically from that map. So let's start with the political map. If you have a textbook, you can turn it to this political map on page A17. Also, if you have your INB, you should have that available because that also has some notes that can help us. If you don't have a textbook, you can look at the map here on the screen that I'm about to share. So let's start by looking at an example of a political map. So here we go. Here's a political map. There's lots of them in our textbook. They all kind of use the same system to show the same kinds of things. So what I want you to do is take a moment and just look at this map and think about, okay, what kind of information can you get from this map? You can get information about what? Maybe give the video a pause, give that answer some thought, or give that question some thought. Okay. So now let's also go to our INB and let's look at some of the notes that we have about political maps here. Okay, so we have this H chart where we did a warm-up about physical, political, and both. And we also have these notes here where we made a key for all the different kinds of things that can be found on a political map. So again, give some thought. What information do political maps convey to the reader? Because they are different than physical and different than thematic maps. So maybe give these notes a look and then pause the video and think about answering this question. Political maps communicate information about blank. What can they tell us about? So go ahead, pause the video. You are welcome to go back to your INB, or I will put this map up on the screen, the political map up on the screen too. And if you want to answer that question on your planning sheet about what political maps communicate, once you've given it some thought and written down some answers, you can go ahead and start the video again. Okay, so let's talk about what some possible answers could have been if you were struggling with that a little bit. Political maps, unlike physical maps, they focus on these kinds of things, right? So you could have answered with they show information about cities or capitals. They show information about countries. Sometimes they show information about states as well. So that would have been what you could have put in here for what political maps communicate. What kind of information political maps communicate. All right, they communicate information about these kinds of things. So the next step then is to go to our political map on page A17. I'll put it up in a minute, and you're going to write down some examples. You're going to explain how it communicates information about these kinds of things with some specific examples from the map. So if I were to put this map back up on the board, if you were to look at this map, what would be some examples of information that is communicating? So if you said political maps communicate information about countries, then give an example. What are some countries that you can see on this political map of South America? If you want to go even further and explain how you know it's a country, how you know that word is a country, that'll bump your score up even higher for that explain part. So talk about how you know Venezuela or Peru or Paraguay is a country. Okay. You can also find examples, like find a national capital or a city of a specific country. And you can, if you want to go even farther, you can explain how you know that that is a national capital or a city. So what we're doing here is, in your example explain, this does not have to be in complete sentences, find some specific examples of things that are shown on this political map of South America. And you're going to write those here to use as your explain part. So go ahead, and I'm going to put the map back up, and you are going to pause the video and find some specific examples of countries or capitals or cities that you could use in your writing. Now let's move on to our second type of map and what it communicates. So give this some thought. Physical maps. What do physical maps communicate information about? You already made a political and physical map, and you put different things on each one. So what can we learn from physical maps? Pause the video. I'll put an example of a map up. You're going to pause the video, and then you're going to write your answer here. What do physical maps give us information about? So here's a physical map. Look it over. You can also go to your INB and look at the information we took about physical maps. So give it some thought. If you can come up with an answer, write it down in the physical maps column. Okay, so let's look at our notes a little here. We know that physical maps give us information about two main things: about different landforms, which we have all in here in our notes, and physical maps, as I'm flipping through, also give us information about elevation, right? Those are the two main things found on physical maps. So physical maps communicate information about landforms and elevation. Now, if you said something about terrain or what the land is like, that's fine too. And you go into more specifics when you talk about the explain, or you give examples of that. Okay, so next step is to go to the physical map on page A8, the physical map of North America, and to explain this a little further by giving examples of landforms and elevation that are found on that map. So let's go look at the physical map. Here it is. So looking at this map, let's find some different kinds of landforms that are specifically found on this map. So I see a bay, Hudson Bay. I see a gulf, the Gulf of Mexico. I see a plain, the coastal plain. Look over the map and find some different landforms that you can use as examples to explain to your reader what kinds of things are found on a physical map. So pick a few, go back here, and then some examples would be, like I said, the Hudson Bay. I'm not going to write them for you. I want you to pick your own. The Gulf of Mexico, the coastal plain, right? Pick some examples of landforms that are found on this map. Go ahead and pause the video when I get back to this map. You're going to pause the video, and why don't you pick some different landforms that are found on that map. Now, to give a little more in-depth explanation, talk about then how this map shows elevation, right? And we should know by now that different elevations are shown through colors. So you're going to go back to your notes and add another example here about explain to your reader about how elevation is shown on this map. Maybe give some examples if you want. All right, so I'm going to put up this map again. Talk to your reader about not just landforms, but about how elevation is shown on the physical map. Okay, so last step now is we're going to talk about thematic maps. Now, we haven't talked about thematic maps for a while, so I'm going to take you back to a place in our notebook. Thematic maps communicate information about what? Maybe you remember, maybe you don't, but give it some thought. If I go back to Thursday, September 21st, or Monday, November 25th, for depending on whether you're green or yellow day, I can find this page on thematic maps. And it tells us right here that thematic map, a map is a map that communicates information about a theme or a topic. So let's go ahead and add that to our notes. Thematic maps communicate information about a theme or topic. You can go ahead and pause and copy that down if you want. Now, if you remember, we looked at lots of different kinds of thematic maps. We played that like guess the map title game, right? And you should have a list here of different kinds of thematic maps. So thematic maps can communicate information about all types of themes and topics. Tons of different themes and topics. You can show a lot of things through a thematic map. For this particular paragraph, we're going to focus on this map that is from our textbook on page 40. This is the Ring of Fire map. So here, you're going to explain, give a couple different examples of what this particular map tells us about the world. Okay, so if we go and we look at the map, all right, what is this map telling us? What can we learn from it? Okay, what can we learn from it? Here is the key, if that helps you. But explain what this thematic map tells us about the world. So pause the video, give it some thought, write down some ideas, and then you can resume the video for a little discussion. All right, so some things you can talk about. You could be real general and just say something as in the explain part about how this map tells us where the Ring of Fire is and where different volcanoes are and where earthquakes have happened. You could also get a little more specific and tell us that you can tell us about like where in the world there have been lots of volcanoes or earthquakes, or you could describe briefly where in the world the Ring of Fire is, because that is information that this map tells us. So basically, one or two, or maybe three things that you can learn about the world from this thematic map. So if you need to add any more, go ahead and pause and do that. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up the planning. So what you should have then at this point is you should have generally what kind of information a political map gives us, and then some examples from this political map. What information a physical map gives us, some examples from the physical map, and what information a thematic map gives us, and some examples from that thematic map. There's not one right answer. Nobody's paragraphs have to be the same. Sorry, got cut off. No two paragraphs are going to be the same. There's not one right answer. As long as you are helping the reader understand the different kinds of information that these maps can communicate, you are doing it right. All right, good luck. Next step is to use this to create your plan, but you've done most of the hard work.